The balance of power is one of the most important concepts of international relations, yet we rarely hear about it on the news. One cannot understand international relations without properly understanding the concept of the balance of power. So, just like the name says, countries act to maintain a balance of power or an equilibrium of power in the international system. And this is done by distributing power among states into equal or unequal shares. And by doing this, countries or a group of countries can protect themselves against other countries or a group of other countries by matching their power against the power of the other side. And the main purpose of the balance of power is to achieve peace by creating a system where there is not one country that can dominate over all the others. And the reason why countries need to maintain a balance of power is because there is no higher world authority above countries. So there is no world police that assures that it will come and help a country during a war. So countries can only rely on themselves. So many argue that countries should actively pursue and maintain a balance of power. Some consider this as the best way to arrange the international system and the best way to help countries coexist peacefully. However, this concept also assumes that countries and wars can happen whenever there is an imbalance of power. So the balance of power can either lead to peace or war. So when you look at conflicts around the world, it's important to also look at them from the perspective of how the balance of power between those countries is arranged. Is it balanced or is it unbalanced? And this brings us over to the concept of polarity. So the international system can be unipolar, bipolar, or multipolar. So unipolar is when there is one country that is the main power and dominates the international system. Many argue that the US is in this position. Bipolar is when there are two countries or a block of states that are similar or equal in power. And this can be applied to the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the US. And multipolar is when there are at least three main powers. And you could see this during Europe during the 19th century. So the term balance of power refers to that concept itself, but there are also several strategies that are related to it. And the two main strategies are balancing and bandwagoning. So balancing refers to a country's behavior that tries to prevent a rising power from becoming a hegemon. So balancing can be done internally or externally. And internally, this is when a country increases its own economic resources and military power. So this is done in order to be able to rely on your internal capabilities in response to a potential hegemon. So this way, a country tries to avoid being dominated by a stronger power. And a country can increase their defense capabilities, they can increase their budget, they can develop its economy for arms buildup, it can improve its defense policies, its defense technologies. And there is also external balancing, and this one is basically done by making alliances with other countries against a country that is perceived to be the source of danger. Then we have bandwagoning, which is the opposite. So bandwagoning refers to a country's behavior of choosing to ally with a country that is the source of threat. So this is done to gain benefits and ensure security, but this can also lead to a decrease in autonomy and opportunities to cooperate with other countries. So this one is done when a country finds itself in a weak position and decides to ally with the stronger country. And there is also a third strategy, and this one is known as hedging. So hedging is kind of like an insurance policy. Hedging lies in the middle between balancing and bandwagoning. In this case, the country conducts a counteracting policy by strengthening its economic cooperation with the country that it sees as a threat, while at the same time preparing for confrontation by increasing their military capabilities. So you can see how it's kind of like in the middle between both. It's not totally balancing against the country, and it's not totally allying itself with the country that it sees as a threat. It's kind of like somewhere in the middle. So to identify a country's strategic choice, it's important to examine their military as well as their economic power. And there are also two perspectives related to the balance of power issue. There's offensive realism and defensive realism. So let's take into account the international system where survival is the main priority of a country. So countries must rely on themselves. They cannot 100% trust other countries. So how would a country deal with this system? So a country might choose the offensive realist approach. So in this approach, a country tries to maximize its power and become the strongest country in the system. Because if the country is stronger than all the others, then no other country will attack it, because the country that attacks it will not be able to win. However, by doing this, you might get into a security dilemma, or as I like to call it, a Mexican standoff. So this is when a country rises in power and the other countries feel threatened by it. So if the country becomes too powerful, it can attack others, and those other countries will not stand a chance. So those countries will try to increase their own power or form alliances in order to protect themselves from the powerful country. But this might actually make the country that wants to be more powerful to feel threatened and pursue even more power. And then the other countries will feel threatened by that. And again, they will increase their power even more. So this is one of the issues. You can become the strongest country so that no other country will attack you, but you might make the other countries feel threatened by you, and then you will feel threatened even more by them. So this is known as the security dilemma. And then there is the defensive realist approach, in which a country will instead increase their own power in order to maintain a balance of power. That way the system is stable and it tries to ensure its own survival. However, you might still get attacked by other countries, who knows, since you are not the strongest of all the countries, but rather you are similar in power as the others. This, of course, has its own risks, but it can also bring stability. And there is also a distinction between a regional balance of power and the balance of power in the international system. So you can see the issues in the regional balance of power if you look, for example, at the Middle East or Europe or Asia. So there are many different perspectives that you can take in international relations. So in international relations, there is no one right answer. There are just answers. So if you were to take this perspective and apply it to look at the balance of power in Asia and Europe, what you would see in Asia is China rising economically and militarily, and the countries in the proximity of China, they're adopting strategies to counterbalance China. And in the case of Europe, from a balance of power perspective, the Russian intervention in Ukraine was an attempt to maintain the balance of power with Europe and the West. So from a Russian perspective, the balance of power would be broken by NATO expansion into Ukraine. So you can of course disagree with this perspective and with some of the views of the examples that I gave, but this is basically the main idea of how the concept of the balance of power works. So when you analyze some conflicts in international relations, you can always take this perspective, as it is possible that some conflicts might be cases related to the balance of power. So if you want to know more about international relations and how it works, check out some of my other videos on this channel, and also check out my 37-hour Spanish course on Udemy, because learning languages is also very important in international relations. So the link is in the description, and thanks for watching.